We're here to interview Randy Sonntag. He was born in New Jersey, but he's actually a product of Florida schools, having moved here as a young man. You started in the 4th grade as a drummer. How did that work out for you?
Not well at all. My father had gone to New York City. We were living in New Jersey. Gone to New York City and brought back an E-flat mellophone that he gave to my brother to learn. And he came back with a drum set for me to learn. And so I would go to Belvedere High School and take private lessons on the drums from the high school band director. And it was about the most boring thing I think was known to mankind. And you have to count carefully. I'd learn 1, 2, 3, 4, and then say 1, 2, 4, ring. 1, 2, 3. And so he said, now you have to go practice this. You have to get good at that. Well, I did it right the first time. What do you want me to practice? Anyhow, after several weeks of futile attempts, that ended. No more private lessons, no more having to play the drums. And that was the end. I had quit. I was done. Until we got to the 6th grade. Down here in Florida, we had moved down here permanently. And my parents asked me if I wanted to play the trumpet. And my dad had played an old Army bugle up for us up in New Jersey. And I liked trumpet. I really liked the sound. And I thought, I'd like to play trumpet. So they got me a cornet and started me on private lessons, got in the band program in Jupiter Schools, which was K through 12, and John Hupp was the band director. And he started giving me private lessons, and I joined the band in the 6th grade. In the 7th grade, I was in the high school band playing marching shows on the field with the high school band. And that started my career on trumpet.
Well, how did that grow into becoming a band director? I understand you attended Florida Atlantic University, but as a performance major, and you were going to be a performing musician.
Well, it seemed, as I went through high school, I graduated Martin County High School in Stewart, and had a wonderful young band director who now lives up in Rockledge, I believe, Lemoyne Roll, with my high school band director, and he started giving me lessons, and I went through making the All-State, and when I got done with high school, it seemed like that was what I was good at, and it made sense for me to follow what I was good at. So I then went to Indian River Community College just to get music courses and music education courses. And from there went down to Florida Atlantic University and became a performance major at Florida Atlantic University with Bill Prince, who was the teacher of the jazz program down there. And graduated from Florida Atlantic University with a performance degree. Now, I did not take any education courses while I was there at all. Big mistake, but it worked out. When you look back, hindsight's 20/20, it worked out really well for me.
So how did you get from being a performing trumpeter to being a performance major who's now teaching a band?
Well, I had my performance career. I graduated in '72 and would go back and forth between Detroit and South Florida, playing in the summertime up in Detroit, playing just miscellaneous engagements, working on excursion boats up on the Detroit River down to Lake Erie. And then in the wintertime, I'd come down to Florida and I'd do the club dates. Big bands were still real big, a big thing back then, and I was getting adequate work, but the performance career really wasn't going as well as I had imagined, and so I started doing other things, substitute teaching during the day. I took a job as a security guard working for security at the nuclear power plant in Hutchinson Island. Oh, that was a journey. And then in my substitute teaching, I would substitute for anything. And then I started substitute teaching for agriculture in Indiantown Middle School, living in Hobe Sound. And that led to subbing for the band director at Indiantown Middle School. They had a program of about 10 to 15 students in the band program at Indiantown Middle School, and I went in and did whatever the plans were for the day, and was helping this little girl try to play clarinet, and she was holding the clarinet backwards. I didn't know anything about clarinet playing, but at least I knew
right hand on top,
which hand goes where, and I finished working with her, and she had a lot more success. It wasn't great, but it was more success than she had been having. And when we finished, she just looked at me with these big brown eyes, and she said, "Thank you for helping me." And she said, "Are you coming back tomorrow? Would you help me again tomorrow?" Oh, boy, she grabbed the strings of my heart and just gave a yank, and it was all over. I thought, wow, that was really great. What fun working with these kids and teaching them instruments. So I went back the next day, and she was there again, but she brought 4 or 5 of her friends. And so I was teaching all of them how to hold this, how to do this, how to make this sound. And I was just having an awful lot of fun.
Well, that was certainly a pivotal moment in your career.
Yes, it was.
And you've also mentioned Bill Prince and your former band directors as pivotal people.
Yes.
Are there others that helped you find the road to being a band director?
Well, when you look back on it, it's interesting, the little threads that hold things together that lead your path. I know that just working with those kids in Indiantown was really a life-changing experience for me. Within a month, my advisor from Florida Atlantic University called me and said that his wife, who had been teaching in the parochial schools in Broward County, was stepping down, and that job was open. Was I interested in coming down to Broward County and taking on that part-time job? And it was through the Magnavox Corporation. It was Music for America, and you recruited your own students, and you taught them in the elementary schools in Broward County on a part-time basis. And he said, I was thinking that you could do that and maybe come back to school and start working on, maybe getting in a master's program or getting your education courses. Well, my performance career really wasn't going anywhere, and so that wasn't going to interfere with that at all. So I decided to leave the security guard industry and go back to school. And I completed all my education courses and taught in the parochial schools in Broward County for that year.
What challenges did you encounter as you were beginning your career as a band director?
Well, I did my interning at Jupiter High School with the person who started me on trumpet, and that was John Hupp, who started me in the 6th grade. And he ended up being my supervising teacher. And then I ended up getting a job at Jupiter High School as a string teacher, teaching orchestra for the high school, strings to the middle school, and recruiting and developing a string program in the elementary schools. 2 years later, I took over the band program when John Hupp retired, and I found that my biggest challenge was that I had never had band in college. I had no idea how any of these instruments were supposed to be played except for the trumpet. And so my biggest challenge then was to seek out the information. Well, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I went to really good people in order to get that information. I would take clarinet lessons from Bill Prince. I would go down to his wife, Jane, gave me flute lessons. And not to become a player, but to become a teacher. This is what you need to know on how to get the right sound. This is what you need to know to teach it. And Ken Mauger was one of my high school band directors. He taught me bassoon lessons. And I covered the major instrument groups that way, just continually going to school while I was already teaching in order to find this out. As far as what a band is supposed to sound like, I have recordings of some of my bands when I first started teaching, and I listen to it and I say, oh dear God, what was I teaching those children to do? Oh, because they would do exactly what I asked, and it was just cacophony. It was absolutely awful. And so I just have to thank people like Rudy Von Unruh and Dick Musey, who would take their time in the evening. I'd spend night after night at their houses just listening to great recordings that they had. Listen to this, Randy. Listen to this. Now, listen to this selection. Listen to that. Listen to the sound of the horns and the trombones, the blend. Listen to this. This is what you want to try to sound like. And then sitting through countless MPAs and band performances, listening, this is what a band's supposed to sound like. That's how my concept of sound, which is everything, was developed.
So you actively use the networking of Florida Bandmasters to help you.
Yeah, without Florida Bandmasters Association, I never could have done anything of this sort.
That's a great tribute. What words of wisdom or advice would you like to pass on to young directors?
Stay positive. Focus on the things that are working for you. There's so many aspects of developing a band program that have to come together to make it really work. And you're going to constantly find roadblocks. Schedules don't work. The parents are not cooperative. The administration is not cooperative. The students are not motivated. You don't have the right materials. There's so many things that can go wrong. But there's certain parts of the program which are going well. And you need to focus on those when you have the opportunity and develop those. And work with the path of least resistance. And do that with a great enthusiasm. And everything else in time will come around your way.
That is great advice. What is there about your personal character that has enabled you to achieve your high level of success?
I guess it's my enthusiasm. I mean, I absolutely love being a band director and working with the kids. I can never think of a day that I didn't look forward to being at my middle school. And I was there hours before the kids would get there, and I would stay until hours after the kids had left. So they were very, very long days.
So you were enthusiastic, you were stubborn.
Very stubborn. Yeah, I knew exactly the sound that I wanted to have and would just stay at it until I got the sound that I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What concepts did you have to instill in your students to help them achieve what you were hoping they would achieve?
I guess the concept of sound. I've always told my students that right from the very start that their sound on their instrument is their thumbprint. That if you close your eyes and listen to 3 different people play on their trumpet or their clarinet, you can tell who's playing by the sound. And so we want to find the correct sound of the instrument. We want everyone to sound the same, as close to the same. So we try to match 3 things. We try to match pitch, we try to match volume, and then we try to match tone quality. And if we do those 3 things, then we're going to have a beautiful blend of sounds within the band.
While you were actively teaching, what did you do to keep your edge? How did you stay enthusiastic day after day?
Well, I think I would get bored sometimes doing the same thing the same way each year. So I would change methodology, change the band method that I was using for beginning band, and I would just teach it a different way. Teach the same thing, just teach it a different way. I think that always gave me fresh ideas on how to teach my beginning band. And by the way, that was always the most important aspect of my band program, was always my beginning band. Getting the kids started, I guess that's one thing that young directors need to really be aware of, the selection process for instruments, on how you develop your instrumentation, how you pick the right instrument for the kids. That's imperative. If they're on the wrong instrument, they're not going to be successful. They won't like it, and they'll quit. And if you can just find the right instrument for them, get them started, and have them have that instant success, that day one they can get a sound. They're not going to go home and they were unsuccessful. They were successful on day one. They'll stay and they'll start to practice. They'll like it.
And how do you balance that and not end up with a room full of saxophone players?
Well, if something's written on the board and you can see that there's only 5 slots and they're already filled, well, then you can't play that instrument. It's that simple. So I remember when I first started teaching, I knew that, I guess it was Spud Bowen from Atlantic High School. He said, you gotta work on your instrumentation right from the start. And so I went to the All-State Band on the back of the LP, and I looked at, here's 115 kids in this band. So I went and did the math. What percentage is clarinets? What percentage is saxophones? And I lumped all the saxophones together. I lumped all the clarinets together, all the bass clarinets, the contra, the alto, everything. I lumped them all together. I said, this percentage is this instrument. And then I looked at my beginning band program. And I said, okay, well, here's 150 kids starting in beginning band. I'm going to have this percentage of trombone players. So I put it on the board. We have to have X number of trombone players. And then we would start the fittings. And once that was filled, it was filled. And if there were 6 slots open for saxophone, once they were filled, they were filled. Well, you didn't play saxophone. And it was never an argument. Well, I wanted to play saxophone. Well, saxophone's filled. We have to go someplace else. And I would always do fittings with the parents in attendance, because I wanted to get to know the parent right from the very beginning. I wanted them to see that their son or daughter had chosen an instrument with my encouragement.
Yes.
Persuasion, I should say. And why it was the right instrument for them.
It's very wise, very wise. Well, now that you have retired,
Still working.
What are you doing to keep the creative juices flowing?
I am conducting a community band where we have some members are as old as 94 years old, and they're sitting beside 14-year-olds playing the same instrument, and learning from one another, and is supporting one another. There's 80 to 85 members in the band. It's the Palm Beach Gardens Concert Band, and it's a higher calling. It's amazing the music that we're able to play. We give a series of 5 concerts a year, and we rehearse every Wednesday night through the season. That's thoroughly enjoyable. I also do a lot of adjudicating around the state of Florida. I opened up my private studio, again, that I had going very strong when I first started teaching, but as the band program grew, I didn't have time, so I gave that up. But I started my trumpet studio again, thoroughly enjoying that. And then I do consulting around the state, just trying to go in and evaluate where a program's not going as well as somebody wants it to go. I'll go in and look and see what's happening and give some advice to what has to happen to make it better.
Mm-hmm. So you're actively mentoring.
Mentoring all the time.
That's great. That's so important. Do you have a story you'd like to tell to kind of wrap things up for us?
Oh, I think one of the fun things that happened, and it really has nothing to do with the education, but I think when my wife and I first got together, and we kept our relationship away from the students, away from the school completely. It had nothing to do with the school. But the kids are always watching everything that's going on. And she was a teacher at the same school, teaching math at the same school. So we kept it very quiet. And I just remember her dropping me off at a parade site one time. And here's my 180 middle school band kids out there, all getting lined up for a parade. And Miss Page drops me off, and I can hear the voice of one of my percussionists, Mr. Sonntag and Miss Page. Mighty suspicious. And it's just that love of the kids. Okay, it's just amazing, absolutely amazing. It goes back and forth.
Well, this mighty suspicious relationship seems to have worked out quite well for you.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't have done anywhere near what I've done if it had not been for marrying the right person.
So having the right life partner can really assist a band director.
Oh, yes.
Well, we've about come to the end of our half hour. It has just flown by. I've enjoyed our talk, and it's time to say bye-bye.
Bye.